Mummy is a French-Canadian movie from 2014 directed by Xavier Dolan and starring Anne Dorval, Suzanne Clements and Antoine Olivier Pilon. Now, considering the situation that I am currently in at the moment, like a lot of other people, I thought I would take this opportunity to talk about some movies that I've been wanting to talk about for quite some time now. And the first one that came to mind was Mummy. If you saw my video on the 100 best movies of the decade list, then you will know that I put this movie very, very high up, and for good reason. Because I think this is a genuine modern masterpiece that not enough people have seen. So what I want to do with this review is encourage more people to watch it, because I truly think this is a one-off piece of filmmaking excellence that is unlike anything you'll probably ever see. Also, for those of you that maybe recognise the name Xavier Dolan, but maybe can't put a face to the name, I'll help you out there, because believe it or not, he is also an actor as well as a writer and director. And the most notable thing he's been in to date is playing one of the two gay guys from the opening of It Chapter 2. So you're welcome if you could remember the name but maybe couldn't put a face to the name. That is the most notable thing he's been in and might help you for those of you that maybe don't recognise that. Anyway, the plot of Mummy is incredibly straightforward. A neighbour decides to help this widow home tutor and look after her unpredictable and incredibly violent son through a very difficult time in both of their lives. That is it. That is all you need to know going into this movie. And yeah, trust me, this movie is brilliant. Not just the plot, because the plot is incredibly simple, but there are a lot of other things on top of it that make it brilliant. Trust me, I'll get onto that. Now, the first thing I must talk about with this movie is the aspect ratio in which it is filmed in. The movie is presented in a perfect 1:1 square, which is incredibly unconventional for any movie, to be honest. Like, even movies like The Lighthouse or certain scenes in the Grand Budapest Hotel, that was a 4:3 square, not a full-on perfect 1:1 square. But this movie really does push the limits with what one can do with an aspect ratio. The 1:1 square presentation may put some people off, but to be honest, I think it works brilliantly. And to be honest, after a while, you do start to forget it's even a thing. You're just so caught up with the characters and the moment and specific scenes that you just kind of forget the aspect ratio is even a square in the first place. But that being said, halfway through this movie, exactly halfway through the film, Xavier decides to do something with the aspect ratio that I don't think you will even see coming. If you watch the film, you will not expect it happening. And it suddenly gives the aspect ratio of the film an entirely new purpose for being there. It's not just a gimmicky thing that is there for the sake of, oh, look how artsy this film is. Once this specific thing, and I won't spoil it because you need to experience it for yourself on a first viewing, once the thing happens halfway through the film, you start to realise that it is acting as a literal visual metaphor for how these characters are feeling. And then after that scene in the middle, it starts to go back to the aspect ratio that it was in, and you start to, put these things together, and you are suddenly understanding that this is literally visually representing the moment and how these characters are supposed to be feeling. And when it first happened, I was just absolutely gobsmacked, and I was like, why has no one thought of that before? The same thing that happens in the middle of the film does happen again later on in the film as well, and doesn't have as much of an effect as it does the first time you see it, but for the purpose that it is there the second time around, it still works very, very well. However, it's not just the aspect ratio that makes this movie great. The acting is also incredibly good from literally everyone in the film. Anne Dorval, who plays the widow, you really do feel sorry for her at times, and you can see she's just trying to help her son, but her son at times doesn't give her much in in response, and it just makes it very hard to watch at times. But that being said, like, her performance matched with Antoine Olivier Pilton's performance is absolutely brilliant. He is incredible in the movie, and the scenes that they have together, whether it be the two characters connecting more or whether it be them fighting, you can tell that that it's coming from a place of genuine, real, raw emotion, and it works so well. Also, Susan Clement, who plays the neighbor who just offers to help them, she's also brilliant, and the friendship that these three characters have throughout the movie and how it grows throughout the film as well is utterly beautiful to see unfold, and you just want the best for them throughout the film. And the trials and tribulations they go through is also really hard to watch at times. But yeah, it's absolutely brilliant, and their chemistry, all three of them, their chemistry is fantastic. The movie also rides a very fine line between being a brutally realistic family drama and also being a slightly over the top version of that as well. Because some of the scenarios and the ways characters react to certain things can seem a little bit over the top to some people. But that being said, the acting and the direction of certain scenes still manages to ground it in some sense of realism. So even though what is happening or what a person is doing may seem slightly over the top, everything else is still grounded in a sense of reality that makes it still very engaging and still very hard to watch at times. And I think that perfect balance is well realised in this movie. The cinematography as well is also gorgeous to look at in this movie. It's got a very warm, intimate feel to it that really benefits the style and tone of the movie on so many different levels. Not just that though, the fact that they had to plan out every shot immaculately just to make it fit within a 1x1 square just shows that there was a lot of attention to detail throughout almost every single frame of this movie, and it just makes you appreciate the filmmaking on display here just that little bit more. All of that, and then you start to think how complex some of these shots are, is mind-blowing, especially for someone who is into filmmaking and directing like myself. It's the kind of thing that I aspire to look at when making my own things. Like, how much can I get away with in a shot while still making it work within the constraints of a specific thing? And in this case, it's that very tight, small aspect ratio. Also, the soundtrack is really good as well. I don't think there's any original music made for the film. I think the majority of the soundtrack is comprised of popular music from the 90s, 2000s, and the early 2010s, and it works, especially for the sake of the film. Specifically, the use of Wonderwall by Oasis. That song plays during that specific moment that blew my mind during the halfway point of the film, and it is probably the best use of that song I've heard in anything. Like, every time I hear that song on the radio or it just coming up on Spotify, I immediately think of this film. And I love it when a movie does that. If a movie uses a specific song in a specific way, whereby any other point in the future, all I can think about when listening to that song is that scene from a specific film, then I know that film has used it in the right and best way. For example, another song that I have the same thing with is Freebird by Leonard Skinner. Every time I hear that song, I immediately think of the church scene from Kingsman: The Secret Service. Now, as much as I adore this film, and trust me, I love this film so, so much. I do have one tiny, 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 tiny issue with it. And it is a minuscule little issue that, to be honest, could be considered a nitpick. But at the very start of the film, like literally the opening thing of the movie is a block of text that explains the scenario that it is setting up for the film to work. You know, like you see in some sci-fi films or, you know, different films where it's just a block of text explaining anything that's happened before the movie so you understand a bit of pretext. And it doesn't need to be there, because you can watch the movie without knowing or without reading that block of text and it still works just as well. But also, that same block of text could have been conveyed at some point in the film through dialogue or through, you know, something else actually in the movie and really didn't need to be there. But that is literally my only flaw with the film. That one block of text at the start really doesn't need to be there. Apart from that, this movie is fucking brilliant, and I implore every single one of you to go and see it. If you've never seen it, go and watch it now for the first time. Stop what you're doing and go and watch it. If you have already seen it, watch it again. It's absolutely fantastic. And even though I fell in love with this movie from the moment I first saw it, I can now confidently say that it might not just be one of my favourite movies of the decade, but it might also be one of my favourite movies full stop. Because I first saw this movie right at the start of 2019, I think. And I've not been able to get it out of my head ever since. And it's been literally a whole year since I saw it, and it has never left my head. Even if I've seen a better film since then, I still can't get it out of my head. And it's a movie I think about literally on a day-to-day basis. And I rarely get that with literally any other film. And that just goes to show how effective and just well made this movie is. Of course, this movie gets a 10 out of 10. It's absolutely brilliant. I genuinely don't know what else to say. It's such a one-off piece of cinematic brilliance that I'm surprised not enough people have actually seen. If you live in the UK, it's currently on Amazon Prime and has been since last year. So go and watch it. I'm not sure about other territories, but, you know, just look it up. Do what you can. Just everyone needs to see this film. And I am so annoyed that it's not available on DVD or Blu-ray in the UK, as far as I'm aware. Because I really, 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 really want to own a copy of this. So guys, that was my review of Xavier Dolan's Mummy. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Bye.